New York isn't just a city. Upstate has towns that are gorgeous at noon and weird at 10 p.m. Not because of jump scare haunted houses, because the history is heavy, the streets get empty, and the stories are still alive. I'll give you what's documented, what locals say, and how to visit without trespassing like an idiot. Let's count down. Like this video if you've ever driven through a small town at night and felt the hair on your neck stand up. Subscribe because America's creepiest places aren't just in movies. They're right here, and this channel is your guide to the real stories behind the legends. Let's be honest, New York is more than just the city. Upstate, the Hudson Valley, the Adirondacks, and the old mill towns of the southern tier are full of places that time forgot. Some are beautiful, some are peaceful, and some are just plain unsettling. We're not talking about haunted houses you can tour for $20 a ticket. We're talking about real towns, places with post offices, churches, and histories that are darker than the shadows on Main Street. Some have legends that go back to the Revolutionary War. Others have stories so recent you can still find the newspaper clippings. This list is ranked by a mix of documented history, local legend, and the kind of atmosphere that makes you want to keep your headlights on. We're not just looking for ghost stories. We're looking for places where the whole town feels off, where the past is always just beneath the surface, and where the line between fact and folklore is as thin as the fog on a fall night. For each town, I'll give you the real history, the local lore, and what it's actually like to walk the streets, buy a coffee, or try to sleep in a creaky old inn. I'll also give you practical context, what's changed, what's still there, and what you need to know if you ever want to visit or even move in. Let's get started. 10. Lily Dale, the town of spirits. Chautauqua County, Western New York. A few hundred seasonal residents and visitors. Thousands of people come here for thousands of people come here for readings, seances, and spiritual workshops. The rest of the year, it's a private gated hamlet where the line between the living and the dead is blurry by design. Documented history. Lily Dale is the oldest and largest spiritualist community in the U.S. The Assembly Hall, Healing Temple, and Forest Temple are all still in use. The Fox sisters, who helped launch the American spiritualist movement, are part of the town's founding lore. Local claim, visitors and locals alike talk about the energy in Lily Dale. Some say the woods around Ticonderoga Lake are full of spirits, and that the Fox sisters are still felt here. Many report hearing voices in the woods, seeing shadowy figures, or feeling watched, even in broad daylight. Why it's creepy. The entire economy is built around speaking to the dead. The air is heavy with incense, wind chimes tinkle in the breeze, and every other house advertises readings. Even skeptics admit there's something different about Lily Dale. The woods around Ticonderoga Lake are thick, and the silence is broken only by the occasional bell from the Assembly Hall. Reality check. Lily Dale is only open to the public in summer. The rest of the year, it's a private, closed community. If you want to visit, check the calendar and book a room early. If you want a reading, book ahead. Some mediums have waiting lists months long. Sensory, the smell of incense, the sound of wind chimes, and the feeling that someone is standing just behind you, even when you're alone. 9. Napanoch, the prison town, Ulster County, Hudson Valley. Small, quiet, woods everywhere. Napanoch is small, quiet, woods everywhere. And then you notice what's sitting right there. Eastern Correctional, this fortress-looking prison with towers and turrets that basically defines the town's identity. Documented history. Eastern Correctional Facility was built at the turn of the 20th century. It's still active, and its stone walls and turrets loom over the town. The prison's history includes escapes, riots, and stories of inmates who vanished into the woods. Local claim. Locals talk about how the fog rolls down from the ridge, and the whole place gets weirdly silent at night, like sound gets swallowed. Some say the prison is haunted by former guards and prisoners, and that the old stone walls hold secrets that will never be told. Why it's creepy. Daily life in the shadow of an active Gothic prison. At night, the lights from the guard towers cast long shadows over the empty roads. The clang of a distant bell, the smell of damp stone, and the feeling of being watched from behind barred windows make Napanoch feel like a place where the past is always present. Reality check. You're not exploring the prison. It's active. Don't trespass. But if you drive through at dusk, you'll understand why it made the list. Sensory. Fluorescent prison lighting buzzing, the echo of your footsteps on empty sidewalks, and the feeling of being watched from behind barred windows. 8. Sleepy Hollow and Tarrytown, the legend lives, Westchester County, Hudson Valley. Classic river towns with a dark side. If you want a town where the past is always present, this next one fits. Sleepy Hollow is the home of Washington Irving's Legend of Sleepy Hollow. The Old Dutch Church and its graveyard are among the oldest in America, and the Headless Horseman is a local legend. The area is full of historic mansions, winding roads, and thick woods. Documented history. The Old Dutch Church and graveyard date to the late 1600s. Washington Irving's story is based on real local legends. The town embraces its spooky reputation, especially in the fall. Local claim, the Headless Horseman is more than just a story here. He's a symbol. Locals also talk about the woman in white seen near the river, and about strange lights that appear in the woods on foggy nights. Why it's creepy. The woods along the Hudson are thick and dark, and the old mansions that dot the hills seem to hold secrets of their own. The crunch of leaves underfoot, the smell of wood smoke, and the distant sound of a horse's hooves on a foggy night make Sleepy Hollow feel like a place where legends never die. Reality check. The town gets crowded in October. Book accommodations early if you want to visit during Halloween season. The Old Dutch Church and graveyard are open to respectful visitors. Sensory. The crunch of leaves underfoot, the smell of wood smoke, and the distant sound of a horse's hooves on a foggy night. 7. Saranac Lake, the Sanitarium Town. Franklin County, Adirondacks. A real Adirondack town with a heavy past. Saranac Lake is beautiful in the daylight, but its history is heavy. In the early 1900s, it was known as the City of the Sick, home to dozens of tuberculosis sanatoriums. Many of the old cure cottages still stand, their porches empty and their windows dark. Documented history. Saranac Lake was a major center for TB treatment. The cure cottages were built for patients to rest on porches in the fresh mountain air. The town's history is full of stories of hope, tragedy, and the fight against a deadly disease. Local claim. Locals talk about the sanitarium ghosts, patients who never left. The woods around the lake are thick, and the fog that rolls in at night makes the town feel isolated and otherworldly. Why it's creepy. A town literally built to house the sick. The smell of pine and damp earth, the sound of loons on the water, and the sight of empty porches in the morning fog makes Saranac Lake feel like a place where the past lingers. Reality check. Many cure cottages are private homes. Stick to public tours and respect private property. The town itself is lively, with a strong arts community and plenty of outdoor activities. Sensory. The echo of footsteps on wooden porches, the creak of old radiators, and the feeling of being watched in the fog. 6. Amityville, the house on Ocean Avenue. Suffolk County, Long Island. A classic Long Island suburb with a dark reputation. Amityville is a classic Long Island suburb, but it's home to one of America's most infamous true crime stories. In 1974, Ronald DeFeo Jr. murdered 6 members of his family in their home at 112 Ocean Avenue. The subsequent Amityville horror haunting claims made famous by books and movies are hotly disputed, but the house and its story are real. Documented history. The DeFeo murders are a matter of public record. The Amityville horror haunting claims are disputed, but the house has been the subject of books, movies, and endless speculation. Local claim, locals are divided. Some say the haunting was a hoax. Others claim strange things still happen in the house. The town itself has tried to move on, but the legend lingers. Some residents report seeing lights in the windows at night or hearing unexplained noises. Why it's creepy. The house is just another home on a quiet street, but the knowledge of what happened there and the media circus that followed gives Amityville a heavy, unsettling atmosphere. Reality check. The house is private property. Do not trespass or disturb the residents. The best way to visit is to take a walking tour or view from a respectful distance. Sensory. The sound of wind in the trees, the sight of the famous house number, and the feeling of standing on a street where the past is never far away. 5. Ossining, Sing Sing's shadow. Westchester County, Hudson Valley. A river town with a heavy history. Ossining is a river town with a heavy history. It's home to Sing Sing Correctional Facility, one of America's most famous prisons. Since the 1820s, Sing Sing has housed some of the country's most notorious criminals. The old town core is full of 19th century buildings, and the prison's walls are visible from much of the village. Documented history. Sing Sing's history is well documented. The prison has been the site of executions, riots, and escapes. There's been a push to open a museum on the grounds. Check current status before you visit. Local claim, locals talk about the Sing Sing shadow, the feeling that the prison's history hangs over the town. Some say the old execution chamber is haunted and that the river fog brings out the ghosts of former inmates. Why it's creepy, daily life in the shadow of an active Gothic prison, the clang of the train on the Hudson, the sight of the old walls, and the knowledge of what's happened inside make Ossining feel heavy with history. Reality check, Sing Sing is still active. The old prison museum is a work in progress. Check current status before you visit. The rest of the town is a mix of old and new, with a lively downtown and a strong sense of history. Sensory. The echo of footsteps on cobblestone, the smell of old books and coffee, and the feeling that every alley has a story. 4. Hudson, the town with a dark past. Columbia County, Hudson Valley. A river town with a split personality. Hudson is a town with a split personality. By day, it's a hip, artsy destination with antique shops and galleries. By night, the old brick buildings and narrow alleys take on a different character. Documented history. Hudson was once known as a center for gambling, vice, and organized crime. The old tunnels under the city are said to be haunted, and locals talk about the Hudson Shadow, a figure seen in the alleys after dark. Local claim, some say the tunnels were used for smuggling, and that the ghosts of those who never made it out still linger. The town's reputation for vice and nightlife is part history, part legend. Why it's creepy. A town that was once a magnet for trouble, now half restored, half stuck in time. The echo of footsteps on cobblestone, the smell of old books and coffee, and the feeling that every alley has a story. Reality check. Hudson is now a popular destination for artists and tourists. The old tunnels are mostly closed to the public, but the town's history is never far away. Sensory, the clang of a distant train, the sight of porch lights in the fog, and the feeling of being watched in the alleys. 3. Aurora, the shuttered college town. Cayuga County, Finger Lakes, a lakeside village with a closed campus and old ghosts. Aurora is a lakeside village with a shuttered college campus, old mansions, and stories of the lady in white who walks the shore. Documented history. Wells College, founded in the 1860s, was the centerpiece of Aurora for over 150 years. The campus closed in 2024, leaving behind empty dorms and a town that feels half asleep. Local claim, students and locals talk about the lady in white, a ghost said to haunt the shore of Cayuga Lake. Some say she appears on foggy nights, walking the water's edge. Why it's creepy. A town built around a college that's now closed. The sound of waves on the lake, the sight of empty porches, and the feeling of being watched from the windows of old dormitories. Reality check. Aurora is a quiet, beautiful village. The college is closed and the town is quieter than ever. The ghost stories are part of the local culture. Sensory, the smell of lake water, the creak of old wood, and the sight of mist rising off the water at dawn. 2. Ticonderoga, the haunted fort town. Essex County, Adirondacks. A historic town with a haunted fort. Ticonderoga is a historic town with a haunted fort, Revolutionary War legends, and a reputation for strange lights on the lake. Documented history. Fort Ticonderoga is one of the most important sites in American history. The fort has been the site of battles, sieges, and legends for centuries. Local claim, visitors and staff report seeing apparitions in the fort, hearing footsteps in empty rooms, and seeing strange lights on Lake Champlain. Why it's creepy. A town where the past is never far away, the sound of cannons at reenactments, the sight of fog rolling over the lake, and the feeling of standing in a place where history happened. Reality check. The fort is open to the public and offers tours, reenactments, and events. The town itself is quiet with a strong sense of history. Sensory, the smell of gunpowder, the sound of water lapping at the shore, and the sight of the fort's walls in the moonlight. 1. Sharon Springs, the spa town with ghosts. Shahari County, Central New York, a once grand spa town with a haunted past. Sharon Springs is a once grand spa town with abandoned hotels, sulfur springs, and stories of ghosts in the old bathhouses. Documented history. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, Sharon Springs was a major spa destination. The old hotels and bathhouses are now mostly abandoned, their windows boarded up, and their halls silent. Local claim, locals and visitors talk about ghosts in the old bathhouses, strange noises in the abandoned hotels, and the feeling that the past is never far away. Why it's creepy. A resort town that collapsed and is half restored, half stuck in time. The smell of sulfur, the sight of empty porches, and the the sound of wind rattling broken windows. Reality check. Some of the old hotels are being restored, but many are still abandoned. The town is quiet, with a mix of old and new. Sensory, the creak of old wood, the sight of peeling paint, and the feeling of being watched from the windows of an empty hotel. Honorable mention, Letchworth Village, the abandoned institution. Letchworth Village was a residential institution for people with developmental disabilities, opened in 1911 and closed in 1996. At its peak, it housed over 4,000 residents. The campus is now abandoned, with dozens of crumbling buildings, overgrown paths, and a cemetery with hundreds of unmarked graves. The institution was the subject of exposés in the 1970s and 1980s, revealing neglect and abuse. Urban explorers and locals claim the grounds are haunted by former residents. Stories include unexplained voices, cold spots, and the feeling of being watched. Some say the old hospital building is especially active, with reports of flickering lights and doors slamming on their own. Much of Letchworth Village is off limits and patrolled. Trespassing is illegal. If you visit, stick to public areas and be respectful. This is a place of real tragedy. How to visit safely. If you're planning to visit any of these towns, here's what you need to know. Be respectful. These are real communities, not just spooky backdrops. Stick to public areas. Many of the creepiest sites are private property. Ask before you photograph. Locals are used to visitors, but they value their privacy. Visit in the fall. The atmosphere is at its best and the crowds are gone. Don't trespass. It's not worth a night in the local jail. These are the 10 creepiest small towns in New York. Places where the past never really left and the stories are stranger than fiction. From the Hudson Valley to the Adirondacks, these places prove that America's creepiest places aren't just in movies. They're right here, waiting for you to visit. But here's what you need to understand. These towns are not for everyone. You're trading crowds and bright lights for peace, history, and a slower pace. You're accepting a little mystery, sometimes limited services, and the reality that you might be the only person on Main Street after dark. Like this video if you remember when small towns were for regular people. Subscribe because these overlooked communities still exist, and this channel shows you where they are before the secret gets out. Now, if you want to see more of America's strangest places, click on this video over here where I break down the weirdest small towns in the country. I'll see you in the next one.